Hi ladies, Sian Burton here, your marketing and scaling expert for female private practice owners in the allied health space. Today we're going to be talking about how some people build a team around them who feel more like a close-knit family without the weirdness and drama than a group of people who are working together in the same space. And it may seem like a nuance, but the difference between those two things are the difference between having a thriving team and a team who are collectively working in the same space and are not pulling together towards one common goal. So we're going to dig into that today and talk about why it happens, what you can do to create it in your business, and the fundamental foundation of that, which is values, as the name of this video suggests. So if you haven't thought previously about values, I can absolutely guarantee that they are something you intrinsically live, even if you don't realize it. And what I mean by values are the core things that we hold important to us. So where you will see this play out intuitively, without you necessarily even thinking about it, is in your romantic relationships. So if you've ever gone on a date with someone, and that might be many years ago, but it can also happen with friends. So we'll stick with the romantic relationships for now. But if you've gone on a date with someone and you sit down to talk to them and they start talking about how family's not important to them and they believe that the newest car and the biggest house are the most important things in the world and how you're perceived by others is utmost, and you're like, I actually want to vomit sitting here opposite you because I don't believe that at all. That's the example of a mismatch of values. So their values, and they might be misplaced, but their values in that example, and I'm exaggerating here for effect, but their values in that example are status and perceived importance and material things. And your values might be family and making an impact and learning. They may be the things that are really important to you. And we don't often sit down and actively think about what our core values are. But often when you hire your first team member and your second team member, they will be very like you. They will have similar values. They will be often in alignment with how you do things and how you see things. And it will be that you probably knew them from before. And then you were like, oh, well, we get on so well. And they said, I really like what you're doing. Can I come and work with you? Because there was this natural alignment in your values. What happens when you grow and scale a business is you can't find enough people who are just like you. And also, it's not always good to have a complete team that are just like you because they have your strengths, but they also all have your weaknesses. And so you do need to start to get some variety in your team, but you need to still have the same values because otherwise you can have these big disconnects through no fault of anybody in particular, but they can create massive issues in your team. So let me give you an example of this. And I'd love to hear in the comments as you're watching if you're like, oh yeah, I've had that happen for me. So just imagine that you are a psychologist, because and I'm going to use this example. It is true for any type of allied health, but I think it shows it very clearly here in this example. So I'm going to use this one. Please extrapolate it out to an example in your field. But let's just say you're a psychologist. That can be a very heavy space to work in. You've got lots of high needs people with significant trauma and significant issues they're dealing with. For you as the owner, fun might be an important value because it's such a heavy space that you work in. And I've worked with lots of psychologists where fun is a value. And they're like, we try and have as much fun as possible and a bit of a giggle, not at the client's expense, but just a bit of a giggle and have a bit of fun between clients and on lunch and stuff, because it's such a heavy space that we work in. If you don't, their view is if you don't give yourself that space to shift out of that energy, it can get very hard very fast. So I've worked with a number of psychologists where fun is a core value. Now, just imagine that you bring in a clinician who on paper is amazing. They've got an amazing skill set. They've got, a master's in clinical psychology. They have a wealth of experience. But for them, professionalism is their number one value, and fun doesn't come into their top 5 values. It just doesn't register for them. For them, showing up professionally is the most important thing as a psychologist, right? So you've got someone over here who thinks having fun is very important, and someone over here who thinks that professionalism is of the utmost importance. Can you imagine how that plays out when the owner comes out of a session and starts making fun of, something, a meme on Facebook they've seen, or having a giggle about something they watched on TV, lightening the mood, creating a bit of fun, involving the team in having fun? Can you see how that is going to be perceived by the person who has professionalism as their number one value? Nobody is doing anything wrong, but there's a real mismatch and disconnect between the two values. So you've got a very, very skilled, an outstanding clinician, but who does not fit with the values of the owner and the values of the other people in the business. That creates tension, and it creates disconnect between team, because then they start to be like, well, this is very unprofessional. And then they treat people like they're being unprofessional because they see them as being unprofessional. That creates conflict in the team. It creates conflict with the owner. They lose respect from the owner because they don't think that that is in alignment with how you should show up as a psychologist. And it gets not nice very quickly. Neither of those people are doing anything wrong, but it's a mismatch of the values of the business owner and the clinician they brought in. And it can happen very easily if you're not very clear on what your values are and you don't recruit based on those values. Because if that owner had said, I believe that this is a very heavy role that we work in and that fun is of the utmost importance. We have a lot of fun in this practice. We joke between sessions and we have a laugh. Is that something that you feel is important too? And they'd have been like, no, I think the professionalism is of the utmost importance. Immediately that owner would have known that that person wasn't the right fit. But if you don't have those conversations, A, because you don't know what your values actually are, but B, because you're just not having those conversations in in your interviews, because you're under the perception that skills is the only thing that matters and you can train anything else, then please take from this training that actually, while skills are important, you can't train someone to fit your values and your culture. You can train someone to develop a skill set that's more aligned with what you need if they're coachable and willing to learn. But you can't teach someone who values professionalism over fun to be more fun. It's not going to happen. You're just going to be banging your head against the brick wall trying to make that happen. So if you have struggled with your team not feeling like they're cohesive and not feeling like something is off, which then means that they don't develop these really strong bonds and relationships because they're just like, it's a bit like oil and water trying to mix together, right? They're just not meshing well. Then it will almost always come down to a mismatch of values. So if you have team member that you're like, why is this team member just always like rubbing me a bit the wrong way? Sit down and think about the things that are of the utmost importance to you when it comes to how you, the values in your business and how you expect your team to show up. And then think about whether that is how this person shows up and what you think their values might be. Because as soon as you do this, and it's one of the first things we have people do in Success Without Sacrifice, you can see that, oh, there's a mismatch. Like if I ask that owner, like, okay, what are your values? Well, they're fun and blah, 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 blah. And do you think that fun is important to this person? No, professionalism is. They told me in their interview. Okay, so can you see now why you're creating this? There's this tension's being created because they're just opposing viewpoints. Again, no one's right or wrong, but opposing viewpoints are always going to clash. And that is what happens when you've got people whose values aren't the same as yours working in your practice. And when you get this right, when you take the people out who don't align with your values, and they do need to be taken out, unfortunately, because sometimes they're amazing clinicians, or you need to build around them. But I don't advise that because it's your business. But they do need to be moved on. When you remove them, you'll see that your whole team will like spring together and become a very tight-knit team because they're all working towards the same thing. They all value the same thing. They're all inspired by the same thing with their unique differences, right? So I'm not saying about having a team that is all like lookalikes, but if they've all got the same values, they will pull together, right? And going back to the romantic relationship, you can have very little in common with your romantic partner, right? My husband likes to climb and be outside and move his body. I like to watch TV and go shopping and have massages. We don't have very much day-to-day in common other than our eating food and our children. But what we do have in common is our core values. We value the same things. We value the same things with where we spend our money. We value the same things with how we parent our children. And that's why it works, right? You can have different people with different skill sets and different personalities, but as long as their values align, they will be fine together. What won't be fine together is two clinicians that have the same experience and background and knowledge and appear to be the same, who have wildly different values. They won't mesh well together, even if they treat in the same way, and they're like, they just won't mesh well together. And we see this all the time, right? But we don't bring this idea into our business. So I was going to say about friends, and then I stuck with the romantic example. But if you think about, if you've got kids and you go to the school birthday parties and events and stuff, you can tell within about a minute or two, the first time you meet a mum, whether you vibe or not, right? They'll say something and you're like, I don't agree with that. One mum at a birthday party when our kids were 4, and she's still, my kid's still in the class with her, sat down at this birthday party at like 2:00 on a Saturday. I was like, I'm so hungover. I was up till 3 a.m. drinking espresso martinis. Now, I like an espresso martini, but I'm not going to sit down and tell people at a birthday party that I've never met that I'm hungover after staying up all night, right? So immediately for me, I was like, no, that doesn't align with my values. That's probably a no. And, it's just, that's my intuition, right? But it's just been served to show over the years repeatedly that we don't have the same values when it comes to parenting. And so you will see this happen all over the place in your personal life. You sit down at a networking event and you don't know anybody, and you chat to someone and you're like, oh no, you're a no, but you're lovely, you're a yes. But we don't always bring this same thing consciously into our recruitment and our hiring. We tend to look at the person on paper. Would they be a good clinician? Yes, okay, let's bring them in, because what else could I be, like, what does my gut know more than their skill set? And so I invite you, if you take one thing from this training, your gut knows way more than you sometimes give it credit for. But the best thing you can be doing for yourself and your future team and your future sanity, honestly, in all honesty, because this just gets harder if you have 7 people on your team and 3 of them don't align with your values. And I don't want you to be doing this by trial and error. The best thing you can do is to sit down and think about, what other things that I really value highly in my business and how my team show up for our clients. And then, do I feel like my team align with those values, with particular focus placed on anybody who isn't quite gelling with the vibe? So I hope it was helpful. I can see a couple of very good point. My experience this week and last week was exactly this. Yep, great. So I'm glad this resonated. You can't train someone to have the same values. You absolutely can't, right? And we know this because this is why people get divorced. They meet someone, they don't realize their values don't quite align, because superficially they have the same thing in common. They get married, they start to parent, they start to do life, they realize their values don't align. And you can't very easily fix that, right? I mean, lots of people go off to therapy and they try and fix it, but it's never the same as people who do have their underlying core values aligned. Like, it's always hard work, those relationships, as opposed to the ease that is there when you have aligned core values in a relationship. So no, you can't really train someone, because it's fundamentally what is important to us. And nor should you, right? So nor should you train someone to value what you value, because there's nothing wrong with valuing professionalism over fun. it just means that they're not the right fit for your practice. So it's actually about honoring what our values are and making sure that we find people who have the same values as us and can honor our values, than trying to make people fit our mold, because that's not the feminine way either, right? That's trying to get people to be inauthentic to who they are, as opposed to honoring them and nurturing them for who they are, but saying, you're maybe just not the right fit for us. So I hope that was helpful, ladies. If you have questions, please put them on the comments below and I will come back to them and answer. We do cover this in depth in my program, Success Without Sacrifice. If you would like to speak to us about that, let me know in the comments below and we will share a link so you can get a Feminine Way to Scale consultation booked in. They are free. And otherwise, I will see you ladies on my training next week. And if you want to get reminders for these trainings so you know that we're here and we're live and you can ask questions or make comments like these ladies have, then you can use the link in the post and we will then let you know when we're going live so you never miss them. So I will see you ladies next week and I so appreciate you for being here.